Hello, my name is Michael Povich, and we're here today for another segment of Oral Histories of Hancock County, a project which involves people who lived in this community for at least 90 years, who are going to tell us about their life and their experiences and what it was like growing up in Hancock County and living in Hancock at this time. Today we have the honor of our guest of being Richard Carlisle, who is a neighbor of mine and well known in the community. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Povich. How are you?
Mr. Povich, thank you. It's the first time you called me that in a long time, but we won't repeat what you have called me. So, Richard, when were you born?
January the 12th, 1930.
So, happy birthday a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Finally made 90.
Yeah, I'm getting planning for 91.
Well, we hope so. So listen, you were born where?
I was born in it was called the Hagen Hospital down in Lemoyne. It was a maternity house there a woman ran, and it was just before you get to on the left, just before you get to the Lemoyne Town Hall. Okay. It's been torn down in the last 2 years.
And who were your parents?
Harold Eugene Carlisle and Theresa Cook Carlisle.
And what did Dad do for work?
My father was a heavy equipment operator, and eventually he had his own equipment.
And your mom?
She worked in several insurance houses. She worked in O.W. Tapley, she worked in Annie Hurley's, and then she kind of semi-retired.
And you have siblings?
I have three. I have my oldest, Terry Carlisle, she was born first, and then there was Phyllis Ann Carlisle, and she's married to Reginald Young now, and then my son, Richard Jr., lives in Portland.
Now, what about your brothers and sisters?
My sister passed away about 3 months ago. She was 95 years old.
And that was who?
Shirley Carlisle, Shirley Carlisle Nelson.
And your brother?
My brother was Adnan Carlisle, and he went by the name of Tuffy his whole life, and he lives over in Surrey, just beyond me, down on the shore.
So
he's retired from the State Highway Commission.
So where were you living? You were born in Lemoyne, but you weren't living in Lemoyne at that time, were you?
No, I was living in. My wife asked my mother, "How come you went to Lemoyne to have Richard? Because the other ones were born at home." And she said that was just the thing to do then. So I'm the only one that was blonde, and not blonde in the old homestead.
In a more formal medical setting.
Well, I don't know.
So you were the middle of the three kids, weren't you?
Yeah. My sister was 6 years older than me, and my brother was 6 years younger.
So where were you living then?
We lived in Ellsworth Falls in my mother's family's old house, the Cook House, and it was the next house by the Ellsworth Falls Grammar School on the left.
Yeah.
Right across the street was the railroad station.
There was a railroad station then, and
Main Central Railroad.
And Ellsworth Falls was
Ellsworth Falls.
Now, how long did you live at that location?
I lived there until I went to the 7th grade, right next door in the Ellsworth Falls School, and then I moved down to 161 State Street. That would have been right across from where the Knowlton School was.
Now, growing up in Ellsworth Falls, what did you do for fun that you can talk about?
Well, I have a friend. I met him when I was 5 years old, Johnny Fox. And
yeah.
We played together. We lived next door. And he and I played together, and we've been friends ever since. In fact, I saw him the other day. And we went swimming out to Branch Pond, and when we played baseball and played in the schoolyard, and we skated up back in the school. They had a pond up there in the winter. And then in the summer, we used to take the train from Ellsworth Falls up to Jenkins Beach, up on the Bangor Road.
Okay, let's talk about that. So that would have been around the late 30s, perhaps 40s.
Yeah.
There were still passenger trains in Ellsworth.
The passenger train went through that twice a day.
And so the train would stop at the station in Ellsworth Falls.
Every night.
And it was a regular stop. You didn't have to flag it down. It stopped there.
It stopped. They had to pick up. And when the train at night would come by, they had that bag hanging on the
Hook.
side of the road track. And I used to go and sit and watch that because it amazed me how that took that bag so quick.
And that was the mail bag.
Yeah.
So you would get on the train, in the morning?
In the morning, yeah. And I think it cost, if I can remember right, I think it cost about 75 cents, maybe $1 to go up and back to Jenkins Beach. And my mother would give me a little change so I could get a soda or an ice cream. And we'd go up there and spend the day.
And then the train would come back.
We always got up there early because we was always afraid that the train wouldn't stop for us. We'd have to walk home. But the train, I didn't know until later that the train had to stop there and let the mail bag off. So it was an all-day trip though.
Now you said you were in your first 7th grades was at Ellsworth Falls.
Yeah.
And then where'd you go for 8th grade?
I went down to the Park Street School.
And that's, of course, burnt down some years ago.
Yeah, the old Builder's Supply was on the other side of the school.
And Emmanuel Baptist Church is now in that location.
Yeah.
So you told me just coming in today that one of your fondest memories, you would just sort of throw it in, was your first bicycle.
My father, on a Saturday, we wasn't poor, but we didn't have a lot of money. And my father said, come on with me, we're going down the street. So we went down, and he took me into the hardware store. It was called Golf Club. And he said, pick out a bicycle. And I picked out a Roll Fast, red and white. It had a light on the fender and a bell on the handlebars and white tires. And prettiest thing I ever saw. And so he bought it for me. And my memory isn't that great, but I think it cost somewhere between $25 and $28.95.
Which is a lot of money in those days.
Yeah, and he said, now you got to ride it home. So I went and rode it home, up over the hill. And I was so proud of that bike that I rode it up to Ellsworth Falls and went around the watering trough out there and then went home. But
When you said the watering trough?
there's a watering trough right there in the fork of the road, and the horses used to stop and drink there.
Oh, okay. How old were you then, do you think?
Well, I was probably, I must have been close to 8 or 9 because we moved out of there, went down to Ellsworth.
Now, you went to Ellsworth High School.
I went to Ellsworth High School, graduated in 1947.
And how did you like school?
I didn't like school.
Yeah. Were you in the college course or just the regular general course?
I was in the general course, and I had no intentions of ever going to college.
But you were developing interests, weren't you? Which you have carried for the last 80-some years, and that had to do with.
I worked my whole life. I still like to work.
And that's how you learned so many trades.
Yeah. Everywhere I worked, I learned, and I filed that in my memory.
Okay, tell because we're in the vocational school, which is a formal setting where students are learning trades. You didn't have a school like this growing up.
No, I went to the School of Hard Knocks.
All right, well, tell us about the University of Hard Knocks. What are some of the jobs you had? I'm talking about from your earliest memory through high school. Let's just use that time frame.
Well, I worked in the Ellsworth Hardwood Factory 2 summers.
Okay, the hardwood factory.
It was right across from where I lived.
And which was the Knowlton School, which is now Knowlton Park.
Yeah.
And that building burnt down, I think, around 1958, the hardwood factory.
Yeah.
So what did you do there?
I worked out in the backyard doing grunt work, piling up those spool bars. and I got 50 cents an hour the first year, and I did such a good job, I got 55 cents an hour the next year.
Well, good for you.
And I had a paper route with Bangor Daily News, 75 papers. And I had that in the 8th grade, and I had it in first year of high school. I did it, and then I gave it up. And I worked in the plumbing shop, the original Ray Plumbing Company, and I worked for Skip Pratt. He was a licensed electrician, and I worked for him. And then I worked for Ike Polinsky, Pearl Inn's men's shop. I sold clothes for a couple of years. Then I went across the street, and I worked for Alexander's drugstore, Fred Shea, and I worked there a couple of years.
What'd you do there?
I was a soda jerk.
Okay.
And I worked on the counter. And Mr. Shea said, if you will go to, when you graduate from high school, if you will go to college and take a degree in pharmacy, he said, when you get out of school, you can come to work for me, and when I retire, you can have the business. I didn't want to do that.
Okay, but you learned other things too. I mean, okay, carpentry. Did you?
I worked a little on that, but on the plumbing job and the electric job, you were working around a lot of carpenters, and then when I built my house, I did a lot of work there. I like to learn from experience, and then you don't forget.
You know the old saying, an apple doesn't fall far from a tree. You pick up a lot of skills from your father, didn't you?
Yes, I did. My father was an exceptionally good equipment operator, and he was mechanically inclined, and he only went to school sophomore year because in World War I,
yeah,
he was too old, and so he went down to the Bath Iron Works, and he learned down there and brought his knowledge home and taught it to me.
Now you also learned about, you used to hang around a blacksmith shop?
Oh yeah, when I was a kid, I practically lived in the blacksmith shop. Arthur and Charlie had a shop right in Ellsworth Falls, and Matt Giles, and I hung out I watched them shoe horses. I know how they do that. I know how they get hurt, and I know how they heat iron and pound it and make shoes. I learned that, and I was only 8 or 9 years old.
You learned about welding too?
No, I learned to weld in the Navy.
All right. Now, tell me about the kitchen cutthroats. Something you told me about high school, the kitchen cutthroats. What was that?
Well, they started a course there, and they called it the kitchen cutthroats, and they were teaching us how to cook and how to prepare meals. We had a class, and once a month we used to feed the faculty. And
they survived that.
Well, more or less. I think they got sick a few times, but we had a good group. There was 12 or 13 of us, so they were all friends of mine, and I think there's only 2 of us left.
Was that actually a course or just an extracurricular?
It was a curriculum. No, it wasn't a special course, but we had a class. I think we had 2 classes a week, and then we had, once a month we fed the faculty. I learned a lot there.
But your general school experience was, you liked doing kind of stuff that's taught in this school here, and you told me you weren't the world's greatest typist.
No, I never passed my 30-word certificate.
They gave certificates for typing.
I could type, and I typed after I went into business, and I typed, but then they come out with electric typewriters.
That's not bad.
That ended my career.
Okay. Of course, you don't have a computer at home, do you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a computer at home?
I don't own a computer at home. I never had one. Okay. My wife had one.
Yeah. So, in high school, you and I and a lot of students, even though I graduated in '61, you graduated in '47, we all were affected in some way or the other by Sarah Russell.
Sarah Russell was, she was one of my favorites. I had her 2 years for lessons, and then I had her 2 years for homeroom. And my sister was valedictorian. Shirley was real smart.
When did she graduate, you recall?
I don't know. She was 6 years before I did.
Okay,
And she,
41. Yeah.
every night after she'd help Mother with the dishes, she studied for an hour and a half, and she was valedictorian. And Sarah Russell used to say to me, Mr. Carlisle, if you just apply yourself, you could be as smart as your sister. And I used to hate her when she said that.
It didn't motivate you, did it?
No, no.
All right, so you graduated, so you graduated in 1947, and so when you graduated, what did you, what was your next step?
My father bought a brand new mobile crane, the first one that was around here. And he wasn't too busy the first year, but he started picking up. So I learned how to run the crane, and I learned how to repair it and grease it. And then he took me, just before the year before that, he took me with him, and I worked on a big Caterpillar tractor, a shovel. I greased it and changed the oil. I learned how to grease it and change the oil, and how to put the boom up and down and grease that.
You're about 18 or 19 now.
Yeah. Yeah, I was about 18 probably. And then I went to work. I went with him. We went up to Holton, Maine, and fed a hot top plant with material to make hot top. And we lived in a tent in the gravel pit for the whole summer. I hated it, but
Was it just the two of you? You and your father?
Well, we were just my father. We had this tent, and we had a little stove we cooked on. And he had the greatest time. He thought he was living in cloud nine, and I
Living the dream.
Yeah.
And you were living the nightmare.
I had a girlfriend back in Ellsworth, Maine, and I'm up there sleeping in a tent with my father.
Do we share who the girlfriend was?
I wasn't a happy camper.
Okay. And who was that girlfriend? Or do you want to not say? Or you don't remember?
We'll go to the next subject.
All right, moving on. So, how long did you, after graduation, did you hang around Ellsworth doing work? Basically, were you working for your father?
Yeah, I worked with my father. We done a lot of, his business picked up, and we went down to Eastport and done a job, and we moved around. And everything I did with my father was a learning experience, because he was smart. He knew his business.
Well, let's go to the next chapter. And the chapter is reflected in the hat you're wearing, United States Navy veteran. How did that come about?
I graduated from high school, and I hung around for a while, but the Korean War came, and it was either...
That was 1950.
1950, I joined the Navy. I had a lot of World War II veterans said, join the Navy because you have your dining room and your bedroom with you, so I joined the Navy.
Okay.
And I joined in October 24th, 1950.
And where did you, what was your first?
I went to boot camp in Newport, Rhode Island, and I had 13 weeks of boot camp. Met an awful lot of guys from down south and New York, and that was a learning experience.
Different culture, because you really hadn't been out of Maine before. So, when the third year's boot camp, did you come out? What was your rating when you came out?
I was the lowest thing on the totem pole. I had 2 stripes, and they were red. That meant I was going to go in the engineering department in the Navy. And then when I left the boot camp around the first of the year, and I went to Bayonne, New Jersey.
Okay.
And I went aboard the USS Tarawa, CV-40, an aircraft carrier, World War II carrier, in mothballs. And so they interviewed us a couple of days later, and this officer said, I knew I was headed for the boiler room or the engine room, and I didn't want to do that, but so this lieutenant commander, he said, what did you ever do in civilian life besides what I told him? He said, I worked for a plumbing company for a while. Pipe fitter. So they put me in the pipe fitting, and that was the best thing that could happen to me, because the rate was new and it was wide open, and I advanced
So your rating changed from a red two-striper to...
I went to a red three-striper, and then I went to third-class petty officer.
As a pipe fitter.
Yeah.
So, how long did you stay in Bayonne, New Jersey?
It took us from Bayonne over to the Brooklyn Navy Yard because the ship was too tall to go under the Brooklyn Bridge, and they had to take the radar mast off. So
Yeah.
we went over there, and then we left there, and we went back to Bayonne. They put the radar back on, and we were all ready to go to Cuba. And my father died, and
Really?
I had to come. I had to come home on emergency leave, and the ship was left the day I left. And I went back. I went to the receiving station in Norfolk. No pay records, no medical records, and no money. And the only thing I had for a uniform was dress blues. They put me in the kitchen washing dishes. They put me in a barrack painting. They done every miserable thing they could. And after about, every morning they had another master at arms, and they were doing the roster, and they fell and say, "Carlisle," and I wouldn't answer.
Carlisle?
So it went about 4 or 5 days, and finally they changed the watch, and this other master at arms came, and they were going through, and he said, "Carlisle." I said, "Oh." And then I said, "Where have you been?" "You've been over the hill." So they took me up to the master at arms shop, and I got away from that because they couldn't prove it, and I didn't know where to go, didn't have any money. So
where were you at that time?
I was
you still in Bayonne?
I was in the receiving station in Norfolk, and then they come in 2 days, 3 days later and said, "Carlisle, get your gear together. You're going to Bayonne, New Jersey, to get a troop ship to go back to Cuba to catch your ship." So that's what I did.
So did you finally catch up with the Tarawa?
Yeah, I got back down there. And it was in the summer, and I landed there with a dress blue, 100% wool uniform and a heavy peacoat.
And you're in Cuba?
And I was in Cuba, Guantanamo Bay.
Did you get overseas, or was that your sea duty?
No, the ship came in. The ship was on operation every day, and the ship came in around 4 o'clock, and I got a chance to go back home. I went back aboard the Tarawa.
And how long were you at sea?
We were there about 2 more weeks, and I stayed aboard the ship. I didn't get a chance to go into the little village there. It's just as well. I probably got in trouble with it.
Yeah.
We came back to Cherry Point, North Carolina, and picked up a squadron of airplanes. And we spent a little time rolling up and down the East Coast, qualifying Marines and Navy pilots. And then we went back into Boston and had a little work done on the ship. And we left there in November and headed for Europe. And I got my first taste of rough weather. Couldn't set the tables up. It was so rough. When that ship was almost 1,000 feet long and 37,000 tons, and it bounced around like a cockstopper. So we got into Gibraltar, and we only stayed there. We relieved the lady, and we left and we went to Algiers. And we stayed there. It was only there 2 days, and then we went to Sicily, and we stayed there for about a week, and then we went up to Naples and Sardinia and Corsica, and then we went down to Athens. We went down to Athens, Greece, and then later on we went into Istanbul, Turkey, went into Palma, Spain, back into Gibraltar, out of Gibraltar, back into Naples again. We played around. The 6th Fleet.
When did you get back? When was the sea duty over?
Well, we were supposed to go back in 6 months.
This is still
But
1950.
the USS Wasp was coming to relieve us, and she ran over the destroyer escort Hobson off the I can't think of the island, and sunk about 120 men went down with her.
Yeah.
So they took the Wasp back to Bayonne, New Jersey, and put a new bow on it. And 33 days later, they came back and relieved us. And 15 days later, we were back in Boston.
And then from Boston, where did you go?
And then they told me to report to the division office. And I went down, and they said, you were put in for shore duty. And I said, yes. They said, well, pack your bag, you're going to South Carolina. I said, I don't want to go to South Carolina.
But you went.
They said, you're going to refuse it? And I said, I want to refuse it. So So I went back into the division, and about 10 days later, they said, Carlisle, report to the engineering officer. So I went down, and the yeoman there, he said, are you the guy that refused to take shore duty in South Carolina? I said, yes. He said, pack your bag, you're leaving tomorrow.
And you did.
I didn't have any choice, I had to.
And how long were you in South Carolina?
I was there about 3 or 4 months. I landed there for the 3rd of July.
So after that, I want to jump ahead. You ended up back up in Norfolk, was it?
No, I went into South Carolina first.
Yeah.
And then 3 months later, they had an opening in the first-class pipe fitter school in Norfolk, Virginia.
Yeah.
And I was third-class petty officer, so I went. And I stayed there 3 months.
Now you, we're going to get into some other part of your life. So at that point, you had a friend
I met
whose wife had a sister.
Yeah, I met another friend. He was on another aircraft carrier, and he came to pipe fitter school. He had a car, and I was in charge of his barrack.
So you're in Norfolk, and this fella name was?
Gail Barker.
Okay. And he lived, where did he live?
He lived in Alexandria, Virginia with his wife and his sister-in-law.
His sister-in-law. His wife's?
Her name was Dolores.
Was his wife.
Yeah.
But his sister's name was who?
Dolores, Ducey. They called her Ducey. Her name was Dolores. And I met her. And we had a nice supper.
Dolores, where does Rose Lee come in on this?
Rose Lee was Ducey's sister, and she worked in the Pentagon, and I met her when I went with Gail Barker up there for the weekend. I met Rose Lee, Ducey.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm getting it straightened out. All right. So you met this nice lady.
Yes, I did.
And this was about when?
Oh, it must have been around somewhere around early 51 or something.
Okay. So you went up there, you met her, and this was sort of.
Her sister was a good cook, and I liked to go up to see her.
All right, you got a good meal out of it.
And I met Rose Lee, and we went to the movies that night, and then we came back to our apartment, had a nice apartment, and about 9:30 her sister and brother-in-law went to bed, and she and I sat and talked till about 11:30.
And on this first casual date, what did you suggest to Rosalie?
I liked her, and we sat and talked that night, and she went to bed to her room, and I slept on the couch. And the next weekend I walked out, I hitchhiked up because he had the duty. And I called during the week. I called Rosalie twice, and I wrote her a note. I got up then, same thing. We had a good time. We had good food, and we watched the television. And we got ready to leave to go back to Norfolk, and it was on Sunday. And I said, "What do you think about you and I getting married?" And
now, was this the first date or the second date?
Second date.
So you decided to.
I decided I was going to marry her the first date, but I didn't say anything.
But you decided to take your time.
Yes.
And at least wait for the second
next
date.
Week. Yeah.
Oh, aren't you good? All right. So your second date, you proposed to her.
The second date, we went through the same thing, went out to eat and everything. And when I got ready to leave, I said, "Did you think any more about you and I getting married?" And she said, "Yes." She said, I talked to the girl in the Pentagon, and she said that, I said, "I met a nice sailor. He's from Maine, and he's nice, and I like him. And he's from Maine." And the woman says, "Oh, God, everybody I ever saw from Maine was weird." So I said, "Well, did you have any more thoughts about you and I getting married?" And she says, "Yes, I think I'd like to marry you."
So the first date, you didn't propose.
No, I just thought about it.
You just thought about it. The second date, you suggested it. And the third date, she accepted.
Yep.
And you got married when?
1952, just before Christmas.
So you had a huge, long engagement, about a year?
No, it was just months.
Month. And where'd you get married?
We got married in the Methodist Church in Alexandria, Virginia.
And was she worried about meeting your mother?
Well, she'd never been to Maine. She never met any of my family. And she, when her aunt died, her aunt left her $750 inheritance. And she had a car, and she always said, "You married me for my money and car." But we came home on Christmas, and my mother, she met my mother, and they bonded instantly. My sister, they liked my family.
So you were married how many years?
64.
And when did Rosalie pass?
About 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
3.5 years ago.
Yeah. And you've already told us you had 3 children.
Yeah.
And you have 4 children, 4 great-grandchildren.
Three children.
Now, you never retired.
No.
You've got a house on the Surrey Road,
Yeah.
and you've got a shop,
We built that in 1961, the house.
and you have everything in that shop that can pretty much fix everything.
Well, people think so.
Well,
You do.
that's for sure. Now, you're enjoying your life.
Yes.
Right.
I've had an exceptionally good life. All of it.
And
Except yeah, I've had a wonderful life.
and you have physical issues that you can't do a lot of heavy lifting, but you have somebody to help you do that.
My mind is still good, but my body is wearing out.
Well, and your TV you keep your TV on very loud,
Only when I haven't got my hearing aids in.
like when I call you on the phone.
No, I take them out when you call.
Oh, thank you. You do a lot of work. You do welding. You have fixed bike racks by hitting them with a sledgehammer and straightening them out.
Oh,
You
yeah,
came-
I never got paid for that job either.
You never sent me a bill.
Well, your son came over and said thanks a lot and left.
Well, he's smart. He's in California now.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you, so we talk about your billing practices.
I like the challenge the challenge to doing things.
Okay, well, I want to show you our last bill. Remember when I brought that lamp over to you, that lamp where it needed to be fixed on the bottom because that plate wouldn't screw on, and you fixed it? Now, we've shown this bill. Now, do you remember this bill? This is a typical Richard Carlisle billing practice. I'm not sure if it's accepted bookkeeping practice, but it was labor 2 hours, $40. Welding and cutting, $12. Steel flat bar, $5. Washer, special washer,
It was a special, it was.
with special washer, not just a plain old washer.
No, I made it.
And painting and tape, I can't read that, what does that say? Painting and electrical tape, something, no charge.
Yeah.
$58.50. But apparently you gave me, as your neighbor, a hometown discount, and you cut the bill down to $35, and you explained why. Only because you're a neighbor, and contrary to what others say, I think you're a pretty nice chap, even if you are a Republican.
Yeah.
And then you put down here, this was a hard job.
It was. Yeah.
Well,
People go to hell for lying.
listen,
I like to fix things. I like the challenge of fixing something, and once I fix it, I don't want to ever do it again, but I know how.
I actually fixed the shredder once too.
Yeah.
But I think one of the lessons to these students who are here in vocational training is that it's still great to have this type of education as opposed to just college courses.
I had this vocational school up here do a job for me when Bob Alexander was here teaching down in the
Mechanics, yeah.
they put a new clutch and converter in my John Deere 950 backhoe.
And these students can do
The
that now.
the students did it, and all I had to do was pay for all the parts.
So listen, you are great for a community. I've known you for many years. My father knew you. And thank you for sharing your reminiscences of your life with us. Richard Carlisle.
I enjoyed it, and I like you say, I've had a very interesting life, and I haven't got any complaints.